The Entrepreneur's Library, episode 109.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Library,
the only book-centric podcast that reviews all the top-selling business books and shares authors' perspective firsthand. This is your resource to finding the next great book
that will enable you to grow personally and professionally.
Welcome your host, Wade Danielson.
Welcome back to the EL. Today we have Kieran Flanagan and Dan Gregory, authors of Selfish, Scared, and Stupid. Stop fighting human nature and increase your performance, engagement, and influence. Welcome, Kieran and Dan, and thank you for joining us on the Entrepreneur's Library.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Definitely. Will you take just a moment, each of you, before we dive into your guys' book, will you take just a moment to tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Yeah, definitely. We had a long history in advertising, so we've spent a lot of our life, I guess, getting a better understanding of what drives human behavior, what makes us do the things we do, what makes us buy, what makes us buy in. And most of our career has been in entrepreneurial startups as well. So that's kind of our background. And I guess our interest is in, what drives human behavior and what helps us lift our game.
We have a business called the Impossible Institute, and it's a sort of research, innovation, and a think tank. And we look at the gap between what people say they do and what they actually do. And in that gap, we find really interesting stuff about how to motivate, how to get results, and how to help entrepreneurs.
Perfect. Well, thank you both for sharing that. Now let's jump right into your book, Selfish, Scared, and Stupid, which was just made available not too long ago for purchase, October 2014. And Kieran and Dan, we're going to move quickly, but we're here to cover the top questions that our listener/reader wants to get answered. And the first question they have is, what was the inspiration behind writing Selfish, Scared, and Stupid?
Well, I really want to say that the inspiration was a family Christmas party, but that's probably a bit of a stretch. I think what was the inspiration was we saw so much information around about what was driving human behavior, and so much of it was based on ideals. It was based on this idea that people have around humanity in their ideal sense. And I think what we wanted to do is say, well, hang on, let's step back a bit. Let's have a look at what's really driving human beings, what's really generating results. Because I think one of the problems is a lot of the business literature that's out there is based on these ideals. And if you want to be a better leader, if you want to be a more effective business person, if you want to be more engaging as a salesperson, you actually need to deal with reality. So it was actually the fact that no one was really, telling the ugly truth.
Yeah, we wanted to, I guess, let people off the hook. So many people we speak to feel so overwhelmed and exhausted about trying to constantly be more. Leaders who are saying, oh, not only do I have to lead a business, but I have to inspire my people to be extraordinary all the time, which is great. But most of the time, none of us are. Most of us are average a lot of the time. And the book's about dealing with that. How do we work with ourselves on our average days, not just our ideal, we're top of our game days. We wanted to build a system that would help everybody perform really well under those conditions of being human.
So you guys have already dove into this just a little bit, but I want to ask so you guys can expound upon it a little bit. So what makes your book different from others regarding the same or similar topic?
Well, we're told it's funny. Someone sent us a message saying, I was on a plane laughing while I was reading it, which we didn't intend it to be funny, but I guess human beings are funny by nature. Who we are and what we do is funny. And it's real. It's not speaking to ideals. As we said, it's dealing with what is true and real for human beings, and that we are selfish, scared, and stupid, which sound like really bad things, but they're in fact not. They're wonderful things and great qualities in human beings.
And again, this isn't academic theory. This isn't pop psychology. This is based on business experience. As part of, we were responsible for the most successful new product launch in Australian history. We were responsible for the most successful brand resurrection ever achieved in this part of the world. And I think what that allows us to do is to base, of what we're talking about in real real life case studies, rather than people post-rationalizing strategies that they weren't necessarily a part of. So that's what we've tried to do, is make this as real, make this as useful, make this as practical as possible.
And this next question is a little bit different. The fact that we kind of, what would you guys recommend to the reader as far as how do you suggest they engage with your book? Is this one they can jump in and out as they need information? Or is this really one you designed to be read from beginning to end?
That's a great question, actually. We were having dinner last night with someone who said, I've read your book apart from the think stupid part because I don't want to be able to think stupid. And we kind of pointed out that the difference between ignorance and stupid is ignorance doesn't know, stupid doesn't want to know. So maybe she does need to read the think stupid. But I think it can be delved into. But I think it's also it's a fairly easy read, and it's written in the order that you would approach an engagement program. So if you want to engage someone, whether you're a leader trying to engage your staff or whether you're a salesperson trying to engage a customer, thinking selfish, then thinking scared, then thinking stupid is actually how you make that sale, how you make that engaging conversation. So I think that it probably works best read in order. But again, it's one of those books that I've had people say to me that they're dipping in and out, coming back and rereading stuff as it comes up.
Yeah, I agree. I think you could go either way. I mean, we're authors. We'd love to think that people read it in order and read every word. And pour over it, but hey, if they delve in and out, we're happy with that too.
And take notes. I assume you're all taking notes
with highlighters.
I actually am. I had one of I sometimes not college from time to time, but one of my the best college professor I had was in advanced writing, and he asked us, what do you need in order to read? And we're like, a book, yeah, that's one. You need two things. And we must have guessed for 10 minutes before he finally said, because we were like, a highlighter, light, eyeballs. We were trying to guess the second item. He said, a pencil. He said, you're not truly reading unless you have a pencil in your hand. And that's how you say. And since that day, I've always read, I technically have a highlighter, a pencil, and the actual book itself. But man, for me to really get the most out of a book, I noticed that, yeah. And what's cool about it is when you write it in a book, you can go back and look at where you were. So if you read, Think and Grow Rich 10 years ago, and you went back there and you kind of wrote in the book, you're writing it your current state. And it's almost like looking back in time and being like, oh, that's when I was building that business and doing this and doing that. So it's kind of interesting to be able to go back and look at some of those old books that you wrote in. So that's off topic, but.
It's one of the cool things about digital books, though, the fact that you can annotate them now and make those kind of notes and actually have them be, you're absolutely right, they are a historic record, because that's certainly the way I read books. And they do reflect the decision making and the what you were going through at that time in your life,
and you filter what you read for yourself, which is fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kieran and Dan, we're to my favorite part of the entire interview, and that's where I'm going to really hand over the mic and allow you guys to take the next 5 to 10 minutes and really break down for the reader what your book's all about. Will you do that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. What we really kicked off in why we need to be thinking selfish, scared, and stupid. And again, we make the distinction between acting selfish, scared, and stupid, which is kind of, human beings' default position. Being selfish, scared, and stupid kind of floats around, the human psyche like a default screensaver. Here's the thing, it's why we survived as a species. Being selfish, our capacity to look out for number one, thinking scared, being able to mitigate the risks that we were facing, and thinking stupid, in other words, looking for the simplest and the easiest solution to our problems has actually been a recipe for success. So it's why we survived and thrived and evolved as a species and sort of, ended up in this dominant position on the planet. It's just that they don't sound like particularly good things. So we tend to deny those things in our decision making, but our primitive brain still drives a lot of our decision making. The American Journal of Psychology recently did a study where they found that when human beings reverse out of a parking space, if there's another human being waiting to take the park, they reverse out more slowly. We become territorial. So that survival thinking still drives the fundamental thinking beneath our decision making.
And then we move on to, I guess, how to do it. So, we section the book into think selfish, think scared, think stupid, and then we delve into each of those points. So thinking selfish is fundamentally about obviously not acting selfish, as Dan just said, and a lot of people get confused about that. We have that pretty much handled, but it's about coming from a place of what's in it for them. We need to move from what's in it for me to what's in it for them. And so often in business, we see that people are so caught up in what's in it for me. We see people present to get funding and they talk about what's in it for me. We see, marketing people talk about what's in it for me. We see clients time after time be able to tell us for a really long time all about their product and what it does and how fantastic it is and the engineering that went into it and how magnificent it is. Yet when you ask them about the customer, about the person on the other end of that, they have very little to say. You almost get the sound of crickets. So that section is really about understanding the extraordinary power of flipping your mindset to how do I filter the world constantly into what's in it for someone else. And by doing that, I can engage my staff by understanding why they're showing up, what they're getting out of it, instead of putting a goal on the wall that's relevant for yourself and your company. And of course it should be that as well. But how do you make sure that goal, that outcome, that thing you're trying to get people to do connects with their goals? How do you link those things?
And then in Think Scared, what we have a look at is the reality that, fear drives us a lot of the time. And it might be, something as simple as social fear. It might be something as important as, a concern about looking after our family or our loved ones. But that fear drives so much of our decision making. And what we look at is how do we flip that fear? How do we flip fear that has us stay in inaction to how do we create a fear of not taking action? How do we leverage ourselves to move forward? So it's about minimizing the fear of action and maximizing the fear of inaction. So what we look to do is given that people are fundamentally resistant to change, we find change very threatening, and there's some evolutionary reasons for that. We fear change in our environment because that can mean changes in the food chain, for instance. So what we look to do is how do we make change seem less fearful? And part of the way we do that is by linking it to the known. So by thinking in terms of analogies, in terms of metaphors, how do we make what's new or what's challenging seem like something we've done before? And also, how do we demonstrate that, we're not alone in doing this, because we're social animals. And human beings find social proof incredibly motivating. If someone just like me was able to do it, then I automatically feel like I have a greater capacity to do something like that. So thinking scared isn't about making people afraid. It's about understanding how fear drives us and making sure that fear is on the appropriate side of the ledger in terms of stimulating action.
And then we look at thinking stupid, which I think for a lot of people is the most challenging one. A lot of people are quite happy to own selfish and scared, interestingly, but they say, I am not stupid, which is highly entertaining. But, again, it's not about being stupid. It's about thinking stupid. And what that means is looking for the most easy, least challenging way to achieve an outcome. So it's about keeping things really simple. And because of the almost irony of writing an entire chapter on keeping things simple, there's even a handy cheat sheet at the front because we couldn't bring ourselves to go, keep it simple. And here's 1,000 words on the topic. But it's about, making sure that tasks are really, really easy and how to reduce resistance to those tasks and how to make failure difficult. And we spend quite a bit of time on why failure happens in the book and how to make failure difficult. So, for example, we talk about a project we did for a really large drinks company on recycling. And the problem, in research groups, 100% of people tell us that they think recycling is a really good idea. 100% of people say, I would love to recycle. I think it's really important for the planet and really important for the future. So we think, great. All we need to do is put some recycling bins into malls and people will flock and we'll collect a whole lot of recycling and it will be amazing. But what happens isn't what we expect, given what we were told by human beings. We put the bins into the malls and we wait to count how much recycling we've gathered, and we get hardly anything. And we'd say, wow, look at all the recycling, all the things that could have been recycled that went into the bins. And then we stop and we say, well, we haven't made this stupid. We haven't made failure difficult. We haven't made it simple to recycle. We need to put the bins into the path of the human beings. So instead of putting them where we put them with signage clearly pointing out where they are, we put them in a position in the mall at the exit to the food area where people almost have to walk into them to get out of the food area. And what we see is that recycling goes through the roof. We fill the bins up and we go, we need to make failure difficult. We need to engineer our systems and design for that failure.
And I think that's probably one of the most critical concepts in the book is, so often in business we have two strategies that we lean on pretty heavily. We rely on motivation, or we try to rely on discipline. And in truth, we do that in our lives as well. And one of the issues that we have with motivation and discipline is that they're only ever designed to be short-term strategies. They don't work in the long term. Typically, we all run out of discipline, or we all run out of motivation, or we're only ever disciplined in alignment with our values hierarchy. So what we've found is that in the long term, design beats discipline, and that's a core concept in the book. So an example of that is I'm your typical type A personality. I spend way too much time at work. I'm never at home, and so I wanted to really make an effort to spend time at home. And what we found was it didn't matter how motivated I was to spend time at home, how disciplined I was in closing my laptop down and getting on the road. It didn't seem to make any difference. So Kieran and I sat down and we did the numbers. And what we found was I've got an hour's commute to work and an hour's commute home. So that's 2 hours every day, 10 hours a week. That's roughly one long work day every week times 52 weeks, factor in weekends. That's 2 whole months that I'm not at home, just in the commute. Motivation isn't going to solve that problem. Discipline can't solve that problem. It's actually a design failure. What we realized was if all I did was move my home half an hour closer to work, or move the office half an hour closer to where I live, automatically, with no greater discipline or motivation, I get an extra month at home every year. So that's what we're looking to do, is instead of relying on these ideals, relying on short-term strategies, how do we design for success? So that's I guess, the fundamental of the book.
So you guys did an excellent job. Kieran, I didn't cut you off, did you? Did I?
No. We gave you a good, solid ending.
You guys did. Yeah, you did. You did an excellent job of giving us a great review of that. And now I'm going to ask you to do something that I think is kind of difficult, and let's take it even a step further and ask you that if the reader could only take away one concept or principle or action item out of your entire book, everything that you wrote and everything that you just laid out and shared with us, what would you guys want that to be?
Well, I think initially that Dan and Kieran are awesome, and I should really hire them to work on our business. I think,
perfect answer.
That's a very selfish answer. Look, I think to a large extent, it's what we just finished on. It's that this idea is we need to design for success. Rather than just hoping for the best, rather than relying on short-term strategies, we actually need to design the environment of our businesses, the construct of the way we build our teams, our relationships, our interaction systems with our customers. We need to design them in such a way that they make success easy. And as Kieran said, they make failure more difficult.
And for me, it's also about swimming with the current of human nature. So we grew up in Australia, and when you grow up near the ocean in Australia, and I guess anywhere in the world, you learn something very important about swimming in the ocean. And that's if you get caught in a riptide, to not try and swim against the current, to go with the current. Because if you try and swim against the current, you get tired, you get exhausted, you go nowhere, and without rescue, you probably drown. And we think it's the same in the way we engage people and the way we build businesses and sell products. We need to learn to swim with the current of human nature. Because if we don't, we get exhausted, we go nowhere, we often give up and, we sort of drown in a way. So we spend most of our lives passionately obsessed with human nature and what makes human beings do the things they do. We go to the movies and we watch the audience. And, for us, it's as much about learning to go, who we are is magnificent and perfect. Human beings are wonderful, but they're selfish, they're scared, and they're stupid. And we need to stop denying those qualities in ourselves and pretend that we're geniuses and noble and courageous all the time, that we're precious snowflakes full of potentiality that need to chant mantras and invest in corkboards. We say, no, who we are is perfect. Let's admit it and let's learn to work with that.
I think there was a couple of things that were quote worthy in what you just said, and that actually leads into our next question as well. And then I'm asking, do you guys have a favorite quote from your book? And I'm not asking so much for someone else's, but something that you guys wrote that you thought would resonate with your audience or already has. Maybe you've seen, I know a lot of people can pull up on, a lot of authors can pull up and see what like the most highlighted sections were, or you see what's mostly tweeted. But is there something that's really resonated with your audience?
I actually think it's the core sentence in the book. This idea that the quote that I most often talk about in the book is right up front in the book. It says, "We are all selfish, scared, and stupid," and that concept itself is so provocative and it challenges people so much that that's my favorite quote because of the reaction. Because people's reaction is typically, "Oh my God, Dan and Kieran, you're so right. Everyone I know is selfish, scared, and stupid apart from me." And I think that opening line is actually what I think stimulates the most conversation. What about you, Kay?
I think "make failure difficult" is a really great quote and thought. Is we spend so much time trying to focusing on success versus saying, well, how do we stop failure happening?
Excellent. So it wouldn't be a great podcast on a book if we didn't ask you both this question. And that's, if there's only one book that you could both recommend based on the way it's impacted your life, created a paradigm shift, which book would you recommend to the audience?
Oh, terrific question. Look, it's funny, you've already mentioned, the book that probably had the most influence on me, and that was Think and Grow Rich. I'm a working class kid from the western suburbs of Sydney, which is sort of a very a blue collar area of Australian culture, and so I really didn't have a lot of mentors for success in business, and so at the time when I started my advertising career, I called probably the most famous business person in advertising in Australia at the time. I called him every day for 6 months, and it was a little bit. Actually, to be fair, I think I called him every second day because I thought calling him every day was just being a pest. And he was so generous with his time, and what was interesting was at his desk he had a box, and it was just he just ordered Think and Grow Rich by the box full. And he picked a copy up and he handed it to me and he said, "Read this 10 times, it'll change your life." And I went away and I read it 10 times and it absolutely did. It was the first time that I got an understanding that people were writing about business and success, and people were considering it in a way that was thoughtful, a way that sort of laid out a roadmap of how to be successful. So that was probably the most influential book in my life.
I don't think I have such a grandiose story of being handed a book from after I climbed a mountain and received some wisdom. I think I wandered into a bookshop one day and bought Purple Cow by Seth Godin, and I loved that book. I loved that it resonated deeply with what I believed about creating communication and how to speak to people, and this idea of being remarkable was wonderful. And I think it's something to this day in everything we do, we still pursue that thinking. Now, how do we do something remarkable? For us, a lot of people that expected us to write a book for a long time, but we didn't want to write a book until it was the right book, until the concept could have that sense of standing out and being interesting in the way it's not like other books out there. So that's taken us a long time and a lot of our careers and getting that book to be written. And so for me, Purple Cow, there's a bit of that in our book, and that was really important.
Well, two phenomenal recommendations. So I appreciate you mentioning and bringing up both of those. And Kieran and Dan, before we depart, will you both recommend the best way for our listeners to not only get more information on both of you, but on your book, Selfish, Scared, and Stupid?
Yeah, definitely. If you go to selfishscaredandstupid.com, you get information on the book, and we'll also, for any of your listeners, we'll send anyone who wants to get a free sample chapter. So you can try before you buy, but you definitely should buy. And I guess information on the organization, our business is called theimpossibleinstitute.com. And we work with organizations. We help them with behavior design. We help them with their creative intelligence. We help them build big influence. We help businesses punch above their weight. So, we'd love to hear from any of your listeners. We spend a lot of our time in the United States. So it'd be great to catch up with people.
Well, yeah, what Dan said.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys both for coming on, first of all, and thank you for sharing your book with us. We really appreciate it.
No, it's a pleasure.
Thank you for having us. We really, as we said, we like talking about the book, so it's not a big ask.
Thanks again for listening in today. Both Kieran and Dan were willing to give us multiple copies of their book, Selfish, Scared, and Stupid. So if you are a VIP, meaning that you've gone to the elpodcast.com and clicked the blue link at the top right that says Become a VIP, you'll have access, multiple chances actually, to win this book. And then if you want their show notes, they'll also be on the elpodcast.com under their book name, Selfish, Scared, and Stupid. Thank you.
Looking for your next book idea?
Head over to the elpodcast.com,
where Wade shares his amazing resource, the top 10 business books recommended by over 500 entrepreneurs, with you for free.
That's the elpodcast.com.
Till the next time, keep it on the EL.